Today I'm gonna show you how to take your videos from looking like this to this. It doesn't matter if you have the best gear or if you're just starting out. Most people think the secret to professional looking videos is buying an expensive camera, especially business owners who think that they need an entire video team just to look credible on camera. But I'm here to tell you that's just not true. So if using an expensive camera won't fix your video quality, what will? Well, what actually matters is how you light your videos, and I'm about to show you how to do it right. We're 7Jazz, and we spent the last 15 years creating content for brands like Uber and Dropbox, and we've learned that lighting is always what makes the difference between amateur and professional looking video.
In this video, we're going to show you why lighting is your #1 trust building tool on video.
The exact camera settings we use to get a cinematic look, no matter whether you're using a camera or a phone.
And our simple 3-step lighting setup to help make your videos look more professional.
Let's dive in.
So why does lighting make such a big difference in how people perceive you in your videos? Well, think of it as if you're going out on your first date. You're obviously gonna maybe put on your best clothes and try and make a positive first impression. While on video, it's just the same. By investing in yourself and your video quality, you're gonna be making a positive first impression in your audience. And if you're a business owner, it's gonna communicate to your clients and customers that you're willing to invest in yourself just as much as you're willing to invest in them. Now, you could stick to natural lighting, but it's oftentimes unpredictable. So in this video, we're gonna show you how to use artificial lighting so you can control it and have professional lighting throughout all of your videos, no matter what. And if you're a business owner, no one's gonna think twice about working with you.
So before we get into the lighting, it's important to set up your shot and your camera settings, because lighting and camera settings go hand in hand. First, choose where you're gonna sit and what your background is gonna be. And next, we'll wanna make sure your camera settings are right. So if you're shooting with the DSLR camera, you've got a couple settings to tweak. First, you wanna make sure you're shooting at 4K at 30 frames per second. Then you wanna set your shutter speed so it's double from your frames per second. So in this case, it's gonna be 1/60th of a second. Next, you wanna choose the most shallow or wide aperture, ideally f2.8, to give you that beautiful blurry background that gives you that cinematic look. And finally, you'll wanna set your ISO anywhere from 100 to 500, depending on your camera's capability for low light. Just remember, if your ISO is too high, your video is gonna start to look too grainy. Now, if you're just using your phone, it's really easy. Just open up your camera app, toggle over to the video, and change your settings to 4K at 30 frames per second. And from there, just choose your framing. Now, if you have a newer iPhone, you can go to the cinematic mode to achieve a similar blurred out background look. And the way to make this more realistic is just scroll or toggle over the f-stop to 5.6. These settings are just a starting point, and we're gonna have to revisit them later once we set up our lights, so stick around to know exactly what your settings should be. Another thing that makes a big difference is the distance between where you're sitting and your background. The further away that you sit, the more depth it creates and the more blurred your background will be. Just stay away from using a blank white wall behind you, and think about adding some interesting elements like a plant, a bookshelf, or pictures on the wall. So now that you've set up your shot and your settings, let's move on to the 3 lights that every professional lighting setup must have: your key light, your fill light, and your backlight. First, you'll need a key light, and I use this 200-watt aperture amaranth light. And unless you're shooting in a big bright room with lots of windows, 200 watts is more than enough for your talking head videos. If you want to learn more about this light, I'll leave it in the description below. And don't forget to turn off your overhead lights. And I'm also using this big softbox to give me soft, flattering light. And I use this honeycomb grid as well that makes the light more directional and prevents it from spilling onto the background. You can think of a softbox as a cloud that softens the harsh sunlight from above. There are a ton of different shapes and sizes that you can choose from Amazon or your local camera store, depending on your budget. The softbox I use is this large Godox Octabox, and I'll leave the link in the description. Always angle your key light slightly down at about a 45-degree angle, and avoid positioning the light directly in front of your face so that you don't eliminate all shadows. Shadows are what shapes your face and creates that professional and interesting look that gives you personality. So here's what it looks like with just one light. And next you need your fill light. I use this Godox SL60 with the smaller rig Octabox. The fill light is exactly as it sounds. It fills in the shadows that the key light doesn't light up. And here's the difference between a 1 light and a 2 light setup. So the next one's your backlight, and this one's optional, but it really helps you create the professional look and it helps you stand out from the background even more. As you can see, when I turn this light on, it creates a glow separating you from the background. So by now you already have a very professional lighting setup, but we're gonna take things up a notch by introducing practical lighting, or as I like to call it, mood lighting. So a mood light is typically in the background and it helps set the tone or the mood of your video. This could be a lamp, an RGB light, or even a strip light. It's a great way to infuse your brand in colors and create a specific look or feel in your videos. I personally like to use a turquoise and yellow because they're complementary colors and they're also our branding colors. So we've installed this RGB strip light in the background on this panel, as well as this RGB light in the background behind the plants that creates a nice contrast between the yellow and the turquoise. And we also like to use these Ulanzi tube lights to add a little extra pop of color on the background. They're super cheap on Amazon and I'll link them below.
Now, I'll quickly note that if you're purchasing lights, you'll most likely encounter daylight and bicolor lights. So I want to get into what this really means and why it's important for you to pay attention to this. So daylight balanced lights are typically calibrated for 5600 Kelvin. And 5600 Kelvin or daylight is typically calibrated to the sunlight during peak hours. Bicolor lights, on the other hand, will allow you to actually change that color temperature from cold light or blue light all the way to warm light or red light. So whether you purchase daylight or bicolor lights, you want to make sure that the lights that you're using are at 5600 Kelvin or daylight temperature, because it's going to keep your skin tone very natural. As you can see in this other video that I filmed, I look like Donald Trump after a long day in the tanning bed. And that happened because I set my lights to 3200 Kelvin and I didn't match my camera settings to that. So to keep things very simple, just have your lights at 5600 Kelvin and your camera should be able to do the work on auto mode, or you can set it to daylight white balance.
So now that you set up your lighting, you want to look to your camera and double check your settings to make sure everything looks good. You might notice that your footage is now overexposed or underexposed. So to compensate for this, you don't want to touch anything other than your ISO. I either want to go higher or lower. In this case, I'm overexposed, so I'm going to lower it a little bit. Most cameras have a built-in light meter that will tell you whether your shot is too bright or too dark. Now, if you're just using your phone, your camera is automatically going to expose for the shot. At the end of the day, you want to rely on your eyes first and foremost to make sure everything looks good.
To summarize, if you want your videos to stand out, you're going to want to use this 3 lighting setup that we showed you. The key light, which is your main light, the fill light, which is going to fill in those shadows, and the backlight, which is going to separate you from the background.
And for that extra personal touch, I highly recommend using mood lighting that I mentioned earlier.
I know this may seem a little bit complicated, but I promise you, the moment that you get these lights and you turn them on, you're gonna open up a world of possibilities and your videos will start looking more professional.
Now, if you wanna check out any of the lighting or gear I mentioned in this video, we put together a budget, intermediate, and professional lighting setup to help you find the best equipment for your needs. The links will be in the description. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions and which lighting setup was your favorite. We'll answer every comment.
And thanks for watching. We're a small channel with big experience and we're here to show you everything that we know. So we'll see you in the next video. Peace.